All right. Hello, and welcome back to Real Seekers. I'm your host, Dale, the Real Seeker. And today I'm joined by a couple of guests. So the first guest is someone who has been on the show quite a few times before, Jaime Castro. Hey, Jamie, how are you?
Hey, how are you?
All right. And on the other hand, we have Andrew going by the name HS on Zoom here. And Andrew, this is your first time being on the show. You wanted to kind of address the topic of Christianity and politics. But before we get into the topic, since you are new to the show, do you want to just take a couple minutes to introduce yourself to the audience? You know, who you are, your background, and maybe a little bit about your faith journey if you're comfortable sharing.
Me first. Okay. My name, yeah, my name is Andrew Luimes. I live in Wasaga Beach. Yeah, and I'm interested in Christianity, in politics, like mostly the ideological spectrum, and that in the way conservatism more jives with Christianity than liberalism.
Awesome. And did you always grow up as a Christian, or did you have a time where you were doubting or anything like that?
Well, actually, I did. I was raised in a Calvinist church that's reformed, and I kind of doubted in my teens and in my 20s. I actually became I went to a retreat, a church, like in another church denomination. I got saved there. That was in 1993.
Awesome. Awesome. So yeah, I think most people kind of, in their teens, that's when they start doubting and stuff like that. And then they work it out sometime by their mid 20s and stuff. So yeah, yeah, it sounds great and great to have you on board in terms of the show. So yeah, I think with that said, let's get straight into this topic because as Christians, we are commanded to partake in politics. This is an important aspect of our lives, and Christians are commanded to get involved and, follow Christ's example in whatever aspect of life they're living. So, yeah, I guess, Andrew, I'll start with you. What is your take? You mentioned that you think Christianity is more aligned with conservative political values, so versus liberal values. So yeah, go ahead and take some time to give kind of your opening case on that front.
The case is that you see that in the city like Toronto, especially the woke people are definitely very anti-Christian, anti-biblical principles. They're very opposed to that.
Yeah. Yeah, so yeah, okay. So and I believe it or not, my brother, that's what brought him to faith in Christ. He recognized that kind of distinction, how the woke, the godless and people on the political left side of the spectrum, how they treated others, with the values that they had. And he did see that the conservative values did heavily align with Christian values and that sort of thing. Just before I turn it over to Jamie, are there any specific values that conservatives have and share with Christianity that you think are the most important, like the top three values or something like that?
Well, for one thing, family values like so I just have a speech impediment. Traditional family values is a biblical principle. In the roles of in the, sexual identity. That, of course, if you're a man or a woman, that's obviously biblical. You know,
And one more that you think the top three is the top three?
okay, the top three. Okay, well, okay. Well, it's social values, obviously, like stuff
Maybe
like
abortion. Abortion.
abortion. Yeah, definitely. Yeah, definitely abortion. Yeah, life is sacred. Life begins at conception. The fetus is human.
Wow.
Awesome, awesome. And all right, awesome. So kind of turning to you, Jamie, then I want to get your sort of opening take. You've heard what Andrew has to say and where he thinks Christianity overlaps with really the conservative end of the spectrum. what's your take on Christianity and politics? Do you agree with that, or do you have your own different take?
Yeah, I agree with Andrew, and I want to first just thank you, Dale, for having Andrew on. Andrew and I are friends. We used to attend the same church, and we have some lively discussions about politics, and I really appreciate his insight. So thank you for having him. I agree with everything Andrew said. I sort of have three outlines from my perspective, just to add what Andrew said regarding, I guess, conservatism versus liberalism. And the first point would be that liberalism has a negative definition compared to conservatism. And secondly, liberalism has negative doctrines as well compared to conservatism. And it also has negative demonstrations or results compared to conservatism. So you brought it up, Dale, that your brother, because of some of these things, came to faith. I think that's one of the things that strengthened my faith and some of the stuff Andrew and I and you and I have talked about. But I think these three things that, we can go into detail in it later if you want, but the definition, the doctrines, and the demonstrations that distinguish between the two ideologies.
All right, awesome. And yeah, I think one thing I should probably ask you guys both, and Andrew, I'll start with you here. Um, so okay, I hear what you guys are saying, and by and large, I think a lot of Christians would probably tend to agree with you guys. But someone might, are you guys trying to argue that there's something inherent to liberalism versus conservatism? So maybe it's the case today that Christianity and conservatism overlap, but 100 years ago, maybe it was the opposite. Or are you guys saying no, there is something inherent to the values of conservatism that, regardless of whatever period you're in, it's going to overlap with Christianity? What's your take on that, Andrew?
Well, no, that, no, I don't, oh, sorry, I'm sorry, my stuttering. Yeah, now, yeah, I don't agree with because like societies in the past, like for example, Rome and Greece, they had other false gods, and then that was their tradition, and it was conservatism, but it was obviously also it was also against Christian or against 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 the biblical truth.
Good point.
Yeah, good point. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, over time, right? The under conservatism as like a respect for traditions. Obviously, under pagan Rome, yeah, their traditions were not so kind to us Christians, right? And that sort of thing. Okay. So it's not inherent. It's just we're making the case that look, according to modern circumstances. Jamie, would you agree with that? Or I think in your answer, you did kind of have a hint that liberalism is kind of inherently against Christianity, or did I just misunderstand that?
Yeah, from one perspective, I think that's true. But what Andrew also said is very important because you have certain values within ancient religions, but also within communism today, like the Chinese Communist Party, that are conservative. Adolf Hitler had some conservative ideologies, but it's mixed also with socialistic liberal ideologies. So the distinction I would make is the difference between, for instance, China would have liberal economic or liberal socialistic economic uh, leanings, but they would, in some cases, have conservative morality or values, right? So I've heard people say before, God is not conservative, and I agree with that. He's just God. He's righteous, right? Because there's a lot of things within conservatism, like the infighting, that's not really biblical. And I think that's the distinction between Christianity and political systems like conservatism and liberalism is that we have forgiveness, there's grace, there's understanding, we're able to reconcile things. Whereas there's a lot of hatred between these two spectrums from a secular perspective. And then when you throw religion in there, the religious right especially, and then the progressive left, it becomes a culture war that the
Culture war,
church
yep.
should be above, right? We shouldn't follow that kind of example. So I think what Andrew's saying is true. But having said that, Andrew's made an important point to me as well. Like two things can be true at the same time, right? Or three things. In this case, I think that's true because there is a verse in Matthew 7 where Jesus uses synonyms for the word conservative and liberal, where he says that the broad, if you look up that word broad in the dictionary, a synonym could be liberal. The broad road leads to destruction, but the narrow road leads to life. So that's the other perspective. What Andrew's saying is true, but then, Andrew has also mentioned to me that conservatism as a whole is, and maybe he wants to talk regarding that, or you want to say something, as a whole is closer to biblical values than liberalism.
Yeah, yeah. Andrew, I saw you wanted to jump in there. Yeah, what did you want to say to what Jamie was saying?
Oh, me. Oh, okay. Yeah. Yeah. Well, that's true. Yeah, conservatism is overall is more attuned with biblical values. Now there are some exceptions, like conservatism is like, for example, liberalism goes for loving and caring. Of course, like for example, like they're supposed to be charitable and donating donating money, helping, but at the same time they take it too far and they take it too far. They cast pearls before swine, and of course they also take if you criticism if you criticize them like multiculturalism or LGBTQ plus, you're a bigot, and so they take things too far and they take things which are not even which are against Christianity.
Yeah, yeah, I think you raise an interesting point there because one of the values that I think used to be associated with liberalism, right? Liberal, hey, I'm liberated, I'm free to do what I want, is this principle of tolerance, right? Like the liberals used to be all about, hey, you do, what's Pierre Trudeau's famous quote, the government has no business in the bedrooms of the nation. You do what you
Yep.
want there, you're free to do there, and it's not our business to interfere. But I've noticed in recent times, liberalism has almost become associated with the opposite. It's this authoritarian, woke, tyranny kind of thing. You agree with me, or it's the highway. What Andrew, what have you noticed in terms of toleration and allowing for people to have disagreements and differences in how they live? Yeah, what have you noticed there?
Oh, tolerance. Oh, well, again, tolerance. Yeah, like the conservatives, of course, are less tolerant of stuff, but then again, they should be, because it's healthier. It's healthier, and it's healthier because it's healthier for society, and the family, and the individual. Like, of course, of course, God, yeah, is created everything, so He knows all, of course. So He knows what works and what doesn't.
Hmm.
Interesting.
And
So,
of course, the liberals, of course, don't. Of course, the woke liberal crowd obviously is against that stuff, and so that's why things go off the rails with them.
so that's interesting. So you think that even today, it's still the case that conservatives are less tolerant of diverse or alternate lifestyles and stuff like that. I would have argued, believe it or not, I think it's the opposite. It's almost like liberals are enforcing their alternative ways on everyone else, even to the point where, if you advance a Christian view, my gosh, your cancel culture is there. You're going to be fired and
Hmm.
socially shamed and stuff like that. So yeah, that's my take on that. But Jamie, what's your take on this issue of toleration? And one thing I should mention just before I go to you, Jamie, is there's a difference between the classical principle of tolerance, which I think is consistent with Christianity, where, hey, look, I can tolerate the fact that you disagree with me, and I can respect you. God has given you the freedom to believe what you want to believe, and maybe I'll try to persuade you that you're wrong or something like that. But I can respect that not everyone's going to agree with me. There are unbelievers in this world, and that's fine. That's the way it is. And we can argue and discuss with each other in respect, despite our differences. The modern principle of toleration, my way or the highway, this intolerance of the modern tolerance principle. But yeah, Jamie, I want to turn it to you on that issue of tolerance. Yeah.
Yeah, I agree with everything you guys are saying. I think liberals have redefined words. Um, like obviously, the word liberal has positive connotation, but also negative connotations because the word liberal is originally associated with the word licentious, which means loose or immoral,
Yep.
right?
Anything
The
goes.
Bible also talks about the word, it uses the word liberal, like your liberality, right? So I think there's a misunderstanding and misinterpretation of words. Same with the word conservative. It has positive and negative connotations. But like you all said, Dale and Andrew, about if you don't agree with someone, they call you names. Um, and even it's worse than that. They even incite violence. And we see that with what happened with Charlie Kirk, and they gaslight. They're blaming him for being hateful and intolerant and bigoted, and they're intolerant, bigoted, and hateful towards Judeo-Christian values or family values. So I think liberalism doesn't practice what they preach, and they're hypocritical because they're only tolerant towards their values. They're not tolerant towards anybody else. So I think basically it's self-defeating ideology where they're not tolerant, they're not inclusive, they're not diverse because they don't accept, like you said, Dale, they don't accept anybody else. And I would also add, lastly, that the word truth by definition and demonstration is exclusive. So we are, according to scripture, to be intolerant of sin, of immorality, of perversions, of corruption, which are all things that liberalism is trying to redefine and normalize.
Yeah, yeah. Andrew, I did see you wanted to jump in there a couple times. So yeah, go ahead and say what you were wanting to respond to Jamie there.
Oh, I'll respond to Jamie. Oh, okay.
Well, I think
Yeah. Well, yeah, he's right. The liberals are they're supposed to be very tolerant, but the problem is, but the problem is, if you actually are opposed to a lot of their beliefs, they're intolerant of that. That's because they're more subjective than objective.
absolutely. Yeah, I myself experienced this. Because most of my atheist friends are definitely hardcore uh, Democrats and stuff from down in the U.S. So on the liberal side of the spectrum. And I used to have great relationships with all of them and stuff like that. But I remember there was quite a few of them, and I don't want to mention any names, but I remember one of them. We had an amazing relationship. Every time I invited this atheist on, we when it came to religion, we could respect each other's views and that sort of thing. And okay, we can agree to disagree on this or that. But then he found out I was a supporter of Trump, and I thought, yeah, Trump, is a great candidate for 2024. And at that moment, all bets were off. I can't even speak to you. You are he literally saw me as a Nazi and
Oh yeah, that's
you
that's
know,
what they think.
yeah, exactly. So yeah, I really think that the tolerance issue is a big issue dividing us on the political end today. Um, so yeah, I think another issue that's really important on conservatism versus liberalism, and this is one of the things that I think is an essential value distinguishing the two, is conservatism tends to value I don't want to say individualism, but valuing individual rights. These are really important. We want you as an individual to respect your right to free speech, your right to live in freedom of your conscience, and these individual rights. Whereas liberalism, there's this focus on the group and the needs of the many outweigh the needs of the few. and stuff like that, even to the point where the group's needs are more important than your individual rights in some cases. So, yeah, Jamie, where do you think is the balance here? Because even within the context of Christianity, we investigated Pastor Steve, and he even told me he values communism. He thinks the all the individual rights we have in our Western democracies is actually contradictory to Christianity. So where do you see Christianity's relationship to this issue of individualism versus collectivism?
Well, that's a loaded question. I don't even know how to begin to answer that. Just to say that you're right, there are a lot of churches that may have biblical doctrine for the most part, but they have communist tactics. They're legalistic, they're authoritarian, they enforce uniformity over unity, which is all against what the Bible teaches, what the church is really supposed to be like. Also, I would go back to the foundation, and I think you and I have talked about this, Dale. I won't say too much about it to give Andrew an opportunity to respond, but the foundation of Christianity is based on Jesus Christ, who is the most remarkable, perfect, uh, extraordinary person, if we can even call him that, because he was the God man that lived. And when you compare our founder with the founder of liberalism, which is basically Karl Marx in modern history.
Several of them.
Yeah, and you look at his lifestyle, there's no comparison between him and Jesus Christ, right? So that's all I want to say is that the results speak for themselves. Christianity, the Judeo-Christian worldview, has produced the greatest civilizations in history. Christianity produces superior well-being, quality of life, greater hope, meaning, and purpose, whereas liberalism or socialism or Marxism has produced the opposite. And maybe, I don't know if you want to go there, Dale, but it basically goes back to the Garden of Eden, where people want to play God and make up their own rules. They're a law unto themselves. So that's all I want to say about that. Is I think you have to trace the ideologies back to where they came from.
Yeah, yeah, excellent. And Andrew, I'm kind of interested in what's your take about these, conservatives have this core value of individualism and stressing individual rights versus the collective needs of the group, which is stressed in liberalism and stuff like that. And where does Christianity come down in terms of that spectrum?
Oh, where does it? In terms of values, well, again, Christianity, of course, is it's obviously God, of course, has said knows, of course, He knows what's best. But Christianity is a lot more logical, and of course, that's why civilizations and Christianity. That's why when they're based on it, they work.
Hmm.
Of course, of course, but now when we're basically where Canada's in the West is basically abandoning that, they're falling apart now.
Hmm.
Yeah. Yeah, I think my in terms of my own view, look, it's there's got to be this healthy balance, right? In some ways, it's true that the group is important, and we care about the church, and sometimes we will make personal sacrifices for the benefit of the group as a whole. But I think that the group can't survive long term if we just have no respect for the individual. Groups are made up of individuals, so you have to remember that they only matter in light of the fact that they're made up of these individuals, and we want to do what's best for everyone and care about people as individual image bearers of God, and we want to help them build up in Christ and stuff like that. So that the whole purpose of the group, the way I see it, is meant to serve the what's best for the individuals and that sort of thing, and vice versa. So yeah, that's the way I sort of see it, is that
Yeah.
there's an appropriate both and on that front. So yeah, but yeah, if we're disrespecting things like, oh well, your freedom of speech can be sacrificed because we don't want to offend the group, that's just non-negotiable. That was never biblical. God gave us and supports our having the freedom to express ourselves and stuff like that. And when you take that away, history is clear. It always ends in bloodshed. All
Yeah.
the wars in history. So yeah, very dangerous to mess with that.
Can I add something to that, Dale?
Yeah, yeah.
That's an excellent point you brought there, because it's funny how sometimes people bring things and it triggers like something that you learned. So you mentioned there at the end something very, very interesting that I think a lot of people don't know, and I've actually talked to some atheist colleagues at work about this, and they were shocked. As you know, Andrew and Dale and your audience, that one of the criticisms against Christianity is that not only that we're intolerant, but also that we're genocidal. You know, they
Oh
would
yeah.
call God genocidal in the Old Testament, that we're responsible for all the violence and wars and injustices in the in the world. It's all because of religion, right? And I've heard people have said it to my face. Religion is the root of all evil. Actually, a multimillionaire told me that one time. It's kind of funny. He told me, Jamie, religion is the root of all evil. And I said, well, I guess you haven't read the Bible. You're a multimillionaire. The Bible says it's the love of money that's the root of all evil. So I thought that was kind of funny, right? God has a sense of humor. But anyway, back to your point, Dale. I would encourage everyone, if you've never heard of it, and I came across it by accident, it's called the Encyclopedia of War. You just Google it, the Encyclopedia of War. It's a secular online encyclopedia, and they confirm that the majority of the genocides and wars in the world were not perpetrated by religion, but by secular ideologies.
Yeah,
I think religion is like it's only like 3 or 4%, right? So I found that fascinating, right? And when you look at what happened in communist Russia, right, during the revolution there for 100 years, how many died? Was it like close to 200 million?
Oh yeah.
I might have that figure wrong, but it was in the millions.
Yeah, and Andrew, sorry, I did see you trying to jump in there at mo various moments. So yeah, go ahead. What did you want to say based on what Jamie was talking about this? Yeah,
Yeah, he's very right. Most wars, very few wars are caused by religion. Like most of them are caused by land or by the want desire for land or again ideology. Actually heard the numbers for the Soviets like under Stalin was like I think it was around I think it was around 35 million that were killed, I believe. And yeah, and also yeah, and most wars are also caused by again the hate, just simple cultural hatred too,
Hmm.
and for the most part as
yeah,
well. Now,
yeah.
there's now some of the wars in the Middle East, like like the Middle East are caused by religion, like for example, like radical Islam. Now that is for a lot, but that's an exception though.
Yeah.
Yeah, in that case, the religion itself, we can go back to the founding documents where they support and teach jihad and stuff like
Hmm.
that. And that's a marked difference from Christianity and that sort of thing. So I think that's well said. It reminds me, the Crusades is like one of the favorite examples. See how bad,
Crusades was one. Yeah, I never thought of
but
that.
that was pure politics. That had nothing to do with religion. It was religion was used as an excuse after the fact. It was look, the Muslims invaded the Byzantine Empire first, unprovoked, going after
Right.
Christian lands, and the Byzantine Emperor freaked out and asked the West for military support, and the rest was history. So it was pure politics of the day. It didn't have anything to do with religion. So yeah, I think you made a good point there, Andrew, that yeah, history is a mixed bag. There's often a bunch of different causes playing different roles. It's never as simple as we make it. But on that front, Andrew, I do want to ask you because one of the things that I've noticed, and this is something my brother noticed, I mentioned him earlier, is that within the modern conservatism versus liberalism political debate, when
Hmm.
religion gets thrown in, um, there is this appeal to, well, we attack Christianity viciously, and all of its values are evil. That Christianity is the quote unquote the oppressor,
Hmm.
whereas other religions, oh no, they're just minorities. We need. It doesn't matter how vile they are. Like in the case of Islam, there's a whole bunch of hypocrisy there with liberals supporting religions that are antithetical to what they want to teach, but they'll support them because they're not the oppressor. They're the minority and stuff. So that this mindset of oppressor versus a Christian oppressor versus everyone else. What have you? Yeah, what are your thoughts on that sort of mindset?
Oh, are you talking to me? Okay. Oh, Yeah, but yeah, Christianity is seen as generally seen as a suppressor, as the oppressor. Yeah, because of course they're against stuff like LGBTQ and stuff like that, and alternative lifestyles. They are seen as oppressors in that sense. Yeah, definitely. In which is why the left doesn't like is opposed to Christianity.
Yeah, yeah. Do you know, before I go to Jamie on that front, do you know, I was taught by Tony Costa and he was teaching us about the transverse values, basically where modern society on the left, there's this active push because Christianity is seen as this evil oppressor. They want to, everything that Christianity says is good, okay, we've got to say that's bad. Everything Christianity says is bad, we've got to turn that somehow into good. I'm just kind of curious, do you recognize that there is this, and it may not even be intentional on human beings' part. Maybe Satan is kind of pushing this agenda to reverse everything and make good bad, make everything that's bad good. Do you notice this or no? Andrew.
Oh, yeah, oh, well, I'm starting to lose my train of thought here. Cool. This was run it by me again. I thought that was for Jamie actually.
Yeah,
Sorry,
no,
I thought it
no,
was for
no
Jamie.
problem.
Just run it briefly by me again.
Dr. Tony Costa taught a sermon once about this transverse of values that's going on, where liberals they want everything that Christianity teaches is good, they want to say it's bad. Everything they say is bad, they want to turn that into good. So that it's this whole reversal, kind of as a reaction against Christianity. Do you notice that going on, or is that just conspiracy thinking in your books?
Oh yeah, yeah. They definitely want to change it. Yeah, and of course you get the liberal churches, which are of course all into that. They of course already have done that. Yeah, so yeah, they left. Yeah, they try to compromise with biblical principles by going by, and of course they're suffering for because their churches are definitely dying.
Hmm.
Yeah, so yeah, they are trying to change it, and so they want to get away from that oppressor role by conforming to the world.
Awesome. Awesome. All right. So Jamie, I want to turn to you. Same questions there that I asked Andrew about. There is this notion that Christianity is seen as the oppressor, the great Satan oppressor, and all the other religions, oh, they're just innocent little minorities. No matter how vile their teachings are, we have to support and endorse them. But Christianity is the bad guy. And because of that, there is this push to transverse the values, make whatever Christianity says is bad good, and vice versa. What's your take on that?
Again, that's such a loaded question. I don't even know where to begin because I'm sure you can spend a lifetime debating that. From my perspective, I think it all goes back to foundations. Obviously, there is that verse in the Old Testament that says, woe unto you, which means judgment will be coming if you do that sort of thing, make good evil and evil good. So I think it goes back to foundation that truth is exclusive by definition. Truth is intolerant of error and lies by definition. So really, you can only progress into perversions. You can't progress into something better. I know there's exceptions to that, but I'm talking about fixed morality, right? And when you're talking about DEI and LGTB values, it's all progressive, right? But again, it contradicts itself because it's all based on moral relativism. And if everything's morally relative, then so is moral relativism, so is progressive values, so is LGTB ideologies, so is liberalism. So that means there's nothing really for certain. There's nothing that's definite. So I mean, they've just wiped themselves out with their own ideology, right? So it's a huge contradiction. I have to go back to the basics, which is truth is not progressive. Truth is fixed. So that would be my take on that.
Yeah, truth is definitely absolute. Yeah.
Yeah, you're saying, Andrew, truth is absolute and it's objective. Well, let me push back on that because believe it or not, just last week I had a guy named Stephen Paul Edwards who was kind of on the liberal end of the spectrum. He loves religious pluralism. He doesn't
Mm.
like this exclusivist talk. And when I tried to talk to him about truth and that it was objective, it absolute, it's the way we can tell truth from falsity and stuff like that. And
Mm.
he was saying, no, well, look, that's true for you, Dale, but that's not true for me. Truth itself
Mm.
is relative. For a lot of liberals, this postmodernism thing. So I'm just kind of curious, in light of the fact that now we're saying, yeah, but truth itself is relative. Is there any hope for dialogue or trying to come to the truth with people who deny the very fact that there is truth and that it's objective to begin with? Yeah, do you guys see there's any hope on that front, Andrew?
Oh yeah, well, I'm not, well, it's hard to say because yeah, because most people when you would say truth, but for truth is objective, they always deny, what that truth basically is. Like, for example, like when you get argued, one thing is with arguing. It says if you make a good argument, you can convince them. If you make a good argument, you can convince people. But in reality, you cannot because people have their mind made up and they'll always find faults in the argument, or no matter what you say. And they'll always find a way that to think that their way is true and you're false. They just can't really. And it's very difficult to break that in these people.
Yeah, yeah. Jay, I have something I want to add, but first, Jamie, let you say, everything you just said, it sounds great, but you're dealing with people who deny, they say truth itself is relative. So how are you going to deal with someone like that?
Very difficult because we have different definitions, we have different foundations, we have different ideologies. But what I was trying to say is that if they believe in their personal truth, what they said to you, your truth is your truth, my truth is my truth, everything's relative, everything's progressive, then that means there's nothing for certain, including their own ideologies, including their own lifestyles. That means it's not definite, it's fuzzy. It could be wrong, it could be right. So there's no sure foundation. We don't know where to go. That kind of ideology produces chaos, culture wars, division, violence. And this is what we're trying to get at is liberalism is not healthy for society. Progressive values are not healthy for society because they produce division. They produce culture wars. They produce mental health issues. They produce depression, right? We know that liberals are more depressed than conservatives. We know this is their stats, that conservative women are happier than liberal women. So why is that? I think Andrew hit it on the head, is that God created us and he knows best, right? Doesn't mean that everything about conservatism is perfect. Obviously, it's an ideology, there's flaws in it, but overall, it produces better results. It produces better societies. It produces more peaceful societies, more harmony than liberalism does.
Interesting. So that is an interesting aspect that you kind of hint at that like
Mm.
it's almost as though God designed conservatism for the health of societies. Like it's almost like you're kind of implying that's the design plan is to have a conservative government or a conservative oriented government. Is that may be going a bit too far or
Yeah, like you brought up a good point regarding a certain pastor, and there's many pastors like that. They think that a communist theocracy, and that's not what we're in. I mean, the Old Testament, they had a theocracy completely under God. So I think, from my perspective, democracy, and there are some biblical grounds for it, there's some arguments against it, would be the best bet. All I'm saying is that I'm not going to say conservatism is equal to righteousness, right? There's a difference. These are ideologies and they're flawed. But overall, conservatism, because there's problems with conservatism as well. You can go too far with conservatism, right? And it becomes legalism. You can go too far with liberalism because, like you said, Dale, there's part of liberalism that is good, but you could take it too far and then you become the radical left. And I just want to bring this point, and you're the expert on this, Dale, because you're a philosopher of religion. You have a degree in this. Is that from my perspective? Throw away religion for 1 minute. Let's play the devil's advocate like Jordan Peterson does, right? Throw away the Bible, religion, Jesus. Let's just put that on the shelf for a minute, right? So the Bible's out of it. So you take all the sciences, which you're an expert in, one of them, that's philosophy, religion, and science. And philosophy deals with common sense, the laws of logic, that sort of thing. Even those three things, without religion, proves that conservatism is superior. Never mind Christianity, conservatism is superior to liberalism. Just those three sciences: psychology, philosophy, and science.
Awesome. Awesome. Yeah. Anything you wanted to add to that, Andrew, before I go to the next question or?
Okay, yeah, he's right. Yeah, yeah, Christianity. I mean, conservatism does the definitely produce best results. Yeah. Now he's right. Now he says that some Christianity ideology isn't perfect because it does often tend to really because it does sometimes lead to an attitude of not caring, like in greed. It does sometimes do that in some people. So so yeah. He's right. He's right in that. He's definitely right there. Well, he's right on a lot of other points too, but that's one that really struck me there.
But don't forget, I'm wrong about a lot of things too. I'm not perfect. I'm not. I don't like it when people say I'm right. I'm not right. I'm just a sinner saved by grace. The Lord's right, right? I'm just giving you my opinion, what I see, the facts, the results. So if I'm right, it's not because I'm right. It's because there's someone above us, a reference point that's right, and we've sort of connected with that, right? Because I could be flawed in many areas, and I am.
All right, awesome. All right, so Andrew, I want to switch gears and focus in going back to the beginning of your opening case. You laid out, sort of the top three areas, and I think the first thing you mentioned was family. Conservatives are better at valuing the family compared to liberals and stuff. And I just wanted to hear from you what do you mean by that? Because I can see a liberal coming back and saying, no, we value the family better than you guys. We allow for the freedom, right? So some people get married and they should never have been married. They're terrible. It's better to give them the liberality to get divorced because they're just harming themselves and they're harming the kids. And we have testimony of people saying, yeah, it was so much better once we got divorced in our relationship to our kids. Or yeah, like so in what ways would you say that conservatism is better at valuing families? And what would you make with a liberal objecting and saying, no, actually our way is better?
Yeah, well, in that sense, yeah, well, I should have specified when I say family values, it meant traditional family values. One man, one woman, and the children. Like not let's in the that's what I mean. That's healthier when especially if the woman stay at home mother. That's better too. That's also better, of course, than a woman who always just sends the kids off to daycare, stuff like that. And of course, yeah, so I should have said traditional family values. That's what I actually meant. There's also of course a thing with and of course the left and of course liberal family values are more like you know they're both parents are same sex, stuff like that, and which is obviously not even really possible. Stuff like that's what I meant. That's what I meant when I said that. I should have said traditional family values
No, so just to clarify, so
based on Christianity.
uh, okay, yeah, conservatism values traditional family units and
Yeah,
structures, and that's okay. Okay, but I would just say with that though, like answer the liberals' objection because they'll say, well, I don't care. The Bible is some Stone Age book, and that's
yeah,
how they ran their families back then. But we've now learned that there are different ways that you can have a family unit, or perhaps even better ways, such as having same-sex couples or stuff like that. So, like, why is it that the biblical family unit is the ideal as opposed to some other family unit that a liberal would like?
Again, the reason it's simple, of course, the liberal, of course, they think the Bible, of course, is of course it's ancient literature, doesn't apply in the 21st century, and of course, and as I said, that their truth is subjective, not objective, and of course, since God, of course, is perfect and knows everything, the traditional family unit obviously works the best because, as I said, God knows everything. He knows what's best because He created us. He knows how we're wired.
Hmm.
He wired us.
Well said.
Gotcha. All right. And yeah, Jamie, same questions for you. Well, like, so obviously we understand Andrew is talking in terms of the traditional family unit. So I think it's fairly obvious that that connection to the Bible then in that front. But how would you answer this liberal who says, who cares what this Bible says? That's not the ideal. The ideal is to have freedom. Some people need to get divorced. Some people are same sex. Some people have an uncle. It's a free for all for
I would say again, it's back to the definition of words, right? We define words differently from they do, right? Like the word diversity, inclusion, equality, um, have good original meanings, but they've twisted those meanings to mean something they weren't originally meant. Like true equality is only between is only really not a human attribute, but it's a divine attribute, and it exists in the Godhead, right? Just like it's only God who can be self-identifying because He's all knowing, right? So again, I think it goes back to idolatry and playing God, that we know best, we're above the law, we're going to become a law unto ourselves, right? And that goes all the way back to the battle in heaven and what happened in the Garden of Eden, where Satan is questioning God's authority. What, as Andrew well said, what God knows best, and he twists the Bible. He adds, he subtracts, and he's the one that started this whole progressive movement. And I just want to say, I know this is a harsh point, and would love to hear your take on it, Dale. And I think we might have touched on it before. And I'd like to hear Andrew's take on it. It's just interesting to me, and that's all I'm not saying. I'm not pointing fingers. It's interesting to me that the Satanic Church or the Satanic Temple, which is based in LA, San Francisco, that they outwardly acknowledge and take ownership for progressive values and LGBT ideologies. I've seen some of their posters at their parades where it says, Satan accepts you. Satan is tolerant. And they acknowledge that a high percentage of their members are part of the LGBT community. So I find that fascinating. They also contradict themselves because when you challenge them on it, they go, "Oh, we don't really believe in God. I'm sorry, we don't really believe in the devil. So then why do you call yourself a Satanist?" So it's just playing games, right? Mind games. You don't really believe in the devil, but you're a Satanist. You worship the devil. But it's just interesting that those kind of people would, I mean, they hate Christians, but they love progressive values. So how would you understand that? How do you make any sense out of that?
uh, yeah, so I think of my old partner David Johnson, who's an atheist, and he comes out and admits it, like, hey, this is a tactic, and he did a show on the Satanic Temple and said this is great. They've got their mock Ten Commandments and stuff like that, and basically they use it as a tactic. It's number
Right,
one, it's a way to mock and belittle Christians, like, oh,
right,
you believe in all these silly superstitious beliefs. Well, we're going to take them and use them to
right,
mock you, to spit in your face as a Christian.
right.
So that's one of their motivations. That
Yeah,
David Johnson at least was honest enough to come out and say that's what they're doing, right?
that's
So
interesting.
yeah, and yeah, Andrew, what's your take on that as well? Jamie was asking about the Satan's temple there.
Oh yeah, say. Oh, what the Satan? Yeah, well, the Satan is. Yeah, well, this Satan accepts you. Well, yeah, well, now that's something that Christians have always known, of course, that Satan accepts that is for that kind of stuff. But of course, but imagine even most secular people, that the LGBT, the secular, woke crowd already basically knows that it's basically satanic in terms of what Christians think of it. They basically know that already. Because
Yeah.
that's kind of true. Yeah, I would imagine a lot of them are, because every time it seems that everybody, a lot of times you get a famous a famous woke politician or whatever, their children happen to be
Right.
transgender. It seems to be a thing with these people. Now, there's such a thing as sexual dysphoria, but it's very rare, and there's way too many of them to account for that. So
Hmm.
yeah, it's definitely something to do with. So when they say Satan accepts you, yeah, I'm sure that they'll I'm sure they'll dive into that.
It
It's
just reminds
alluring
me.
to them.
Sorry. Go ahead. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
Oh, Jamie?
Yeah, I'm here.
No, no.
Okay, okay.
Uh,
Yeah, I'm finished now.
okay. Yeah, no, I was just gonna fully agree with you. So yeah,
Oh,
sorry.
okay.
But yeah, it just reminds me, Jamie mentioned that verse, right? Broad is the way to destruction, and narrow is the gateway to life and stuff like that. Now there is something though, if we're talking about modern politics, someone could perhaps with Donald Trump being elected, and I remember in 2024 after Trump's election, hearing woke is dead and stuff. So actually, isn't there some falsification? Liberalism is now the narrow gate because so
Mm,
many people are embarrassed to call
right.
themselves woke and stuff like that. So how does that fit into with Christianity? I thought Christianity is teaching that the way to destruction will always be broad. Well, now that seems to be the conservative path, right? Trump's in the White House, the mega movements on
Mm,
top, stuff like
good,
that.
good point.
Yeah, what do you guys make of that?
Well, I'll answer quick, just real quick, because I think there's a big difference between political conservatism and moral conservatism or religious conservatism, right? I think you have to separate the two, and when they get mixed up, like I think Charlie Kirk did a good job. Um, like he used conservative politics to sort of promote the gospel, which is exclusive only through Jesus Christ, morality, which is exclusive according to science. I mean, philosophy and psychology would also back that up. So I think when you trace it all back, it definitely goes back to Marxism. It goes back to the Frankfurt School, which were all Marxists, which they began teaching about critical race theory, just redefining reconstructionalism of morality, of sexuality, of race, of everything, right? Like you well said, I think it was Dale who said it, just throwing everything on its head, throwing everything upside down, right? And that creates confusion, right? But again, I don't know how you get around the fact that truth is not progressive. I mean, sin is progressive. It gets worse and worse and worse and worse, but truth is fixed, right? So I don't know how they can justify that truth is progressive and that your truth, which contradicts my truth, is okay. I mean, that's a fallacy, isn't it, Dale? That's the law of non-contradiction. You know what I mean?
Yeah, actually, absolutely. It's fallacious thinking on
Yeah.
their part for sure. And yeah, all right. Well, Andrew, there's another turning to you, there's another major aspect that I can't believe I've totally forgotten. But
Mm,
in looking at the debate, conservatism versus liberals, once again, I've seen on so many atheist boards this issue of secularism, right? They see conservatism and they do conflate that with Christian nationalism. Oh, that
mm,
Christians are taking over the country. Whereas they say we are secularists. We value a separation of church and state, by which they almost yeah. Well, I won't put words in their mouth. I'll let you guys respond first of all. What do you guys think in terms of Christianity, and should Christians value a separation of church and state, or should we know we're trying to convert the nation and run a Christian nation? Like Andrew, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, well, yeah, the liberals do tend to think that conservatism equals Christianity. So they tend to think that the West is so evil and so bigoted because it's Christian. And so everything that's considered against, liberalism, their principles is automatically Christian. Like they think it's one and the same.
mm,
It's become that bad now. They said even people, they said they go as far as saying even people that they obviously are, not Christians and even swear a lot and stuff. They actually say that they're still, yeah, but they still grew up on they still grew up on the Christian principles because they were in the West, and so that doesn't really. Even if they're, let's say, let's say a very secular conservative, they'll still equate that with being a Christian basically, just because they're agree with Western principles, which means they must agree with Christian principles, even if they're not Christians. That's how bad it is now, how these
mm.
people perceive that. And that's why it's scary.
Do you, Andrew, do you think that Christians, from a biblical standpoint, should we value secularism in the sense of should there be a separation of church and state politically, or should there be no separation in your view?
Oh no, there should be an actual separation, but of course, but of course, laws should be based, of course, on the Ten Commandments, basically, yeah. And of course, in the basic ones, which are very obvious, they already are, like thou shalt not steal, thou shalt not murder. That, of course, obviously is. It's just the ones that are not as in your face, they're where they drift off, like, you know, like stuff like do not commit adultery. That's fine. That, of course, isn't in the law, of course. Well, mind you, it shouldn't be in law because that's always between people and God. It's never against. It's not a government thing, anyways. It never has been. Not really has been. But yeah, but you get my point, though. Yeah, I do agree there should be a separate, like, church, because if the church, well, I mean, if the government funds churches, the church will basically forced to follow their ideology, so they get liberal.
Right.
Yeah, yeah.
Well,
Jamie, same. What do you make of the separation of church and state? Should we value some form of secularism as Christians?
Well,
Yeah.
Dale, that again, these are very good questions, but they're loaded, right? We know that, right? And Andrew well said. Like we've seen that problem with the funding of the Catholic school system, right? I know John Tory at one time wanted to fund all Christian, religious schools, right?
You know, I think that was Doug Ford.
Well, was it Doug Ford? Okay,
it was Doug Ford.
That was Tory.
I thought it was Tory.
No, I didn't know it was a provincial level.
It might have been both. Yeah, it might have been both. Yeah. Anyway, but the point being made is that liberals take that whole concept of separation of church and state completely out of context. That's not what it means, that the government should reject religion. That's not what it originally meant. It meant that the government should not interfere in religious beliefs, which they are. So it's the government who's violating the separation of church and religion. So that's a misunderstanding. Also, to your point, yes, all conservatives are not Christians. Many conservatives are not Christians. That's true. Can a liberal be a Christian? That's a loaded question. Can a liberal who's supporting all these things be a Christian? Jesus did say, by their fruits you will know them. I just want to say, I don't know. Like I would lean, I'm not coming off as Moses off the mount. I would lean to say no, but I could be wrong. But how can you? Jesus was very clear that his kingdom is not of this world. If you're in bed with the culture and with the world, right? He did say that if the world loves you, then you're not part of my kingdom, right? And they're going to hate you like they hated me, right? Because you don't belong to the world. So if you're accepting worldly values or progressive values, then how can you be part of God's kingdom? So it's a tough thing to say. I'm not God or Jesus, so I can't say yay or nay, but I'm just telling you what the Bible says. You can't be in bed with the world and with the culture. The gospel is countercultural, right? Dale, I will say to that point that you make, because it's a good point, the separation of church and religion. Jesus did say, give to God what is due to God and to Caesar what is due to Caesar, right? So obviously we're supposed to respect the government, but also we're supposed to obey God rather than men. So on these moral issues, obviously, or abortion, or gender ideologies, or LGBT lifestyles, obviously we can't accept that because Jesus didn't. Jesus affirmed traditional marriage between a biological man and biological woman. He went back all the way back. Have you not heard from the beginning? God called man and female and so forth, right? And they come together and they're one and so forth. So I would also add to that secular humanism is officially a religion. And secular humanism is now taken over the public school system, right? With all their ideologies, DEI, progressivism, inclusion, accept everybody. So they violated their own separation of church and state. If secular humanism is a religion, which it was deemed a religion. I can't remember when, back in the 60s or 70s. You can look it up. It is an official religion that now is, the government is showing favoritism towards one religion, secular humanism, right? And then interfering in the religion, which is the foundation. You have a house, you knock out that foundation, that house is going to crumble, right? And that's what Jesus talked about. If you build your foundation on the rock, which represents him, you're going to be firm. If you build on the sand of progressiveness, or anything that could move, it's going to collapse, right? And so this is what's happening within our culture. Andrew mentioned it, that it's collapsing because the foundation is the Judeo-Christian worldview. It doesn't mean all those conservative forefathers were Christians. It doesn't mean all conservatives are Christians. But it does mean that those core values, which Andrew articulated, some of them are the foundation. If you knock down the foundation, the house collapses. And I think that's what liberalism wants to do. Karl Marx did incite, and they're following his ideology to violent revolution, right? Violent revolution to oppose what they'll refer to as the whole victimhood, right? Mentality. Whoever's on top challenges them. So the ironic thing is in communist countries like China and Cuba, they don't even follow their own ideology. It's kind of funny because they're on top, so we should really, according to their ideology, be revolting. We should be knocking them out, right? So it's just kind of funny how they just contradict themselves. And the hypocrisy is just pouring out.
Yeah. I think I'll just confirm. I think both you and Andrew kind of took the words out of my mouth on this
Mm,
issue of separation of church and state. I've debated many atheists on it,
mm,
but they totally twisted the meaning, right? Like the originally this came out of this notion of separation of church and state came out of the fact that England did not separate it, right? And there was
right, right,
terrible
right,
persecution and war. That's why we escaped. The Pilgrims escaped to America to
right,
get religious freedom and that sort of thing. So it's this freedom from the government not to interfere with your religious practices. That's what it's about, the doctrine. But in modern times, I think of places like France or Quebec and this entrenched secularist religion, it's imposing now their religion. It's almost this religion of freedom from religion. If you wear a cross, if you're a government employee and
mm,
wear a cross or a religious symbol, oh no, we can't have that because that's the government imposing religion. No, it isn't. That's just the
mm.
government getting out of the way. Hey, the government is made up of all the people, and the people are of different religious faiths. So it's not endorsing a religion to allow a government employee to wear a religious symbol. That's ridiculous. That's where we're getting into a separation of church and state, which is a freedom from religion. And on that front, I'm totally against that. That's not what separation of church and state was ever about. So,
Can I suggest something, Dale?
yeah.
I don't know if you want to go there now or maybe at a different. It could be a different podcast, but I think you know where I think this is leading. And Andrew actually brought it up one time. I don't know if it's up to you. You're the host. You can go with it now or later. But I think where this is leading is back to the Jewish people because Andrew had mentioned to me he finds it very curious why they alone have been the most attacked group of people, and then us as an extension of them as Christians have also been the most persecuted people in the world. But they have flipped that around and say, "Oh, look, you're persecuting us." But we're the ones that have been persecuted the most, and we're not saying, "Oh, because you're persecuting us, you're not accepting us, so we're going to kill ourselves," right? We're not saying that. So it's almost like blackmail, right? So I don't know if you want to go there, but it seems to me when you go back to the Old Testament, what you're talking about, Dale and Andrew, is that the Jewish people, and they weren't perfect, God told them, follow me, don't follow the ways of the pagan, which would be liberalism, secularism, or these will be the consequences. And we see the consequences of the Jewish people going away from God's ways, what God knows best, right? So I think it goes back to that time period.
Yeah, I think we can address it. Why not? It is actually fitting because I'm going to be having
Yeah.
Dr. Jonathan McLatchie, famous
Oh,
biblical
yeah.
scholar and Christian apologist, on my show later today at 2 o'clock. And
Right.
one of the arguments he raised is this. He thinks that there's proof for the Judeo-Christian God
Right.
from the unique and remarkable survival of the Jewish people, whereas
Right.
all the other ancient people, they've died out. Where are the Assyrians today? Nowhere to be found.
Good
Where are
point. Yeah.
the Moabites? But the
Yeah.
Jews, despite being outcast into the diaspora and being forced to live millennia in lands where they're persecuted and subjugated by Christians and or Muslims and stuff like that,
Yeah. Yeah.
they've hung on to their traditions and survived as a people and stuff like that. So he sees God's providence kind of behind the survival of the Jews there. So yeah, Andrew, what's your take? What's your take on that? And I'm trying to find an angle to involve politics with it, but I'll just ask you the
Well,
questions.
I know how, Dale. I know.
Sure. Yeah.
I can interject. I apologize.
Yeah.
It's just obvious, and we talked about this before. It's really bizarre how, and I'll let you frame it, but how the now related to that point, how the radical left has partnered with radical Islam. Hitler did the same thing.
Yeah.
Hitler did the same thing. And then to Andrew's point, what is the reason that the Jewish people have been hated so much from the very beginning? There has to be a bigger reason than them being good business people. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah. So Andrew, over to you. Yeah, I'll let you respond.
Yeah, well, yeah, I was especially with when you make it a point with the Jews, with anti like hatred of the Jews. People think it's another form of racism, but in reality, it's really not, because their appearance is not really all that different from our average European. It's more definitely with their tradition and their God's chosen people, and so that's what it basically, it's satanically inspired. That people just don't understand that. That's the cause of any. Basically, that's basically what anti-Semitism is. And most people don't understand that ultimate root of it.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It is interesting. Like I remember seeing clips of Archie Bunker back in the 70s and stuff, and even for him, like the British, he was quote unquote racist against even the British and stuff. They weren't quite good enough because they weren't Americans, stuff like that. And it goes to show you, as what you're saying with the Jews, it's not always about race. Like, oh, you look different. You're a black man. You're a brown man. I'm a
Yeah.
white guy or whatever. No, it has a lot to do with culture and religion and stuff like that. That hatred can spring up in human beings for all sorts of reasons. So yeah, I think you bring up a good point on that front. And it is still remarkable, despite that, how the Jews have been able to survive and endure and even come together with the nation of Israel. And I like how that's a good idea, Jamie, to bring it into politics. So Andrew, I'll start with you about what do you make of this modern bizarre notion that where a lot of people, at least like half the US, for example, um, seem to be turning on our normal allies like Israel and stuff, a Western democracy in Middle East, and instead they're the bad guys. And someone like Iran, sure, they slaughtered 30,000, but they're just innocent little Muslim dictators, and we've got to support them over and against the US and Israel. Like what? Why is there this turning of the cultural tide, so to speak, in support of terrorists? Everyone admits, CNN admits, the government in Iran were terrorists, but yet they're rushing to support them over and against Israel and US, the traditional good guys.
Well, the reason is because I think it's because, again, they're Jews, and of course they're also, Israel, of course, is basically Western democracy, and of course, so which means basically conservative principles, and so of course they don't the left the liberal crowd doesn't like that, so of course it means they must be the bad guys, and of course Islam, of course, is of course anti-Western, and it's not a white cultural, it's another religion, so it's un-Western, un-Christian, so that means it must be good, basically, and that's in the woke eyes, the liberal eyes.
All right, awesome. Oh, sorry. Yeah, Jamie, go ahead and I'll mute.
Yeah, I just want to briefly say something. I'll let you guys address it. That just popped into my head as you guys were talking about racism. Because, yeah, racism does exist, but I think it's being conflated. Because you're talking about anti-Semitism, but you do have a lot of Jews, especially in Hollywood, that are liberal, that are progressive. So then it can't be racism. So I think it's more belief. It's more against conservative belief versus liberal belief. Because you have Jews on both sides of the spectrum. You had it in Jesus' day. The Pharisees were more conservative, the Sadducees were more liberal. And you have it today. So you even have hatred between progressive Jews and Orthodox Jews, right? And the same thing, I guess, could be said, and I'll let you address it, between progressive Christians. Well, I don't know if you can call them that, but regardless, they profess to be Christians, professing Christians and conservative Christians. So I don't see the racism there. I see it more bigotry towards belief systems. Am I wrong or right?
Well,
So I definitely think. Oh, sorry, Andrew, go ahead.
no, go ahead. I thought he was addressing me for a minute there.
Yeah, no, I'll let you answer. I'll just
No,
briefly.
I was addressing both of you.
I agree. I agree that it is sort of belief oriented, right? Anything that makes people different, these different cultural beliefs, different religious beliefs. Yeah, anything can be used, and there definitely is actual racism. I believe it or not, I had to take down two videos of mine because a friend of mine who was in the show, and I don't want to name names or anything like that, but it was actually one of the shows I did on the Shroud of Turin, a couple shows on the Shroud of Turin. I had to take them down because I was informed that he's his girlfriend was in the background and in that video, and people are giving them actual credible death threats because he's dating someone
Oh,
of a different race. So I don't want to. There is real racism out there, and it's
yeah, yeah,
horrible. It's all hatred, whether it's culture based or thing. You should never hate anyone, even based on moral differences and stuff like that. We, as Christians, we are to love our enemies and stuff like that. Even Adolf Hitler was a human being. But at the same time, we deal with people as human beings, but we try our best to improve the situation, whatever we're in. But it's always wrong to hate someone for any reason, whether that's
yeah.
skin color, culture, beliefs. I'm wearing sunglasses and you hate me because of that. If you hate someone, you're wrong. But yeah, Andrew, go ahead.
Well, no, yeah. No, Jamie was just saying that he says that you always wear sunglasses. He was criticizing
And
me
I
for
always wear a hat because I'm balding. So I hope you don't hate me for that.
I think Andrew does hate you for that, but you stunned into silence. But yeah, sorry, Andrew. Go ahead if you were saying something there.
what do you want to say is that my battery is. I'm actually not at home. My laptop's running on battery. And it's getting low.
No
I might not be
problem.
able to stay
We
on
can
very long.
yeah, no problem. We can wrap up here, kind of thing. So
Okay, yeah, my battery's almost getting low, getting dead.
Yeah, we'll have to wrap
all
up.
right, so Andrew, I'll turn it to you to give a final word to the audience before, and then I'll give Jamie a last word, and then we'll wrap up. So, yeah, Andrew, we've been talking a long time. What do you want to say by terms of last words to the audience?
Okay, well, last words. Okay, well, as I said before, conservative, of course, is a lot better. Is a lot. It's based on Christian principles, so it's a lot better for society and stuff like that. It's the best way. It's societies work the best on it, but conservatism in any historical context does not always correspond to biblical principles all the time either. Like for example, ancient Rome or the ancient Rome or ancient China, or the ancient civil the Aztecs and the stuff like in the Maya. They of course obviously they were powerful civilization. They were ascended, but they were not based on Christian principles. But they eventually did fall too, though. So it doesn't necessarily mean that conservatism in any historical context it necessarily jives with Christianity. But in the Western context, it certainly does.
Awesome, awesome. All right, Jamie, last word over to you, and then we'll
Yeah,
close.
just real quick. There's elements of the Chinese Communist government that are conservative, right? And those elements are liberal. I would say that Jesus just lastly condemned both the conservative right with the Pharisees and the left or the liberals with the Sadducees, right? We can go to two extreme, legalism or liberalism, they're both bad. And I don't know if that term conservative values an accurate term. I would rather just call them biblical values. Because, I mean, there's some conservative values that I guess we could talk about on a different podcast. It'd be interesting that are not biblical, right? But I just want to say Jesus condemned both conservative and liberal people on both extremes. Being conservative or liberal doesn't make you a Christian. And all I want to say, what makes you a Christian is when you repent of your sins, acknowledge that you're a sinner and you can't save yourself, and ask Jesus to be your Lord and Savior. That doesn't make you conservative or liberal, even though you may identify with one or the other, makes you a follower of Christ. The difference is Jesus' gospel is countercultural because the culture says affirm yourself. Jesus says deny yourself and repent. So that's all I want to say on that front.
All right, awesome. So, yeah, I think with that said, Andrew's cell phone is dying, so we will
Yeah.
end here. But yeah, I just want to say thank you to both Jamie and especially to you, Andrew, since it was your first time on the show. I
You're
hope
welcome.
I hope you had a good time
Thanks
on
for
camera.
having me.
Absolutely. Yeah, yeah, you're welcome back anytime, any topic. So, all right. With that said, tune in later today in 1 hour. I will be on live with Dr. Jonathan McClatchy discussing the conversion of the Apostle Paul. He says, just Paul, forget the 12 disciples, forget James, forget everyone else. I can prove the resurrection if you just give me the conversion of Paul. So he's going to be arguing for that argument. And the other thing next week, I'm going to be debating the resurrection in time for Easter with the atheist one from modern atheism. But here's the trick, it's going to be a switcheroo debate. I'm going to be the resurrection skeptic, and the atheist one is going to be the Christian. And so tune in for that. And otherwise, have a great week, everybody. All right. Bye bye.
Bye-bye.